When people take a landscape like this and the barrier breaks down between wilderness and garden, people and nature mesh. And that's what we need. The wilderness is your garden, and your garden is a wilderness. And not only do I believe that we can have nature and eat it too, I don't think we can have nature if we don't eat it. Ramps, or wild leeks, are one of the best known wild edibles in North America. This is an iconic native vegetable that's eaten by millions of people. Ramps are a member of the genus Allium, just like garlic and chives, onions. This is the largest wild onion native to our continent and also one of the most common. Ramps are an important part of the herbaceous community over millions of acres in the Midwest and the Northeast. Ramps are frost-hardy spring ephemerals, which means they have a very short growing season from early spring to early summer. The leaves are only out for 4 to 9 weeks each year. They've been used as food by indigenous people for thousands of years and are still widely eaten today.
It was one of my first memories, like just growing up. I grew up on what's called bear trap, and we have an abundance of ramps on the bear trap. So I could just go right out my grandma's door and we had leeks. But as I got older, being able to explore the reservation and come out into the woods, you know, I found different ramps. I just brought a kitchen spoon a lot of times, and if I wanted to go down and get the bulbs, you know, just make a little hole on each side and pull them up. Oops. So I took, 4 or 5 there, and then I'll just jump up and I'll move over into the next spot, or, you know, never take all, and always leave back for the next person, and just for even the earth. Mother Earth, just leave it back for the animals too. I wish I could give you so you could smell that on video, so people could smell that. It's amazing.
I think ramps are really, really popular. First, because they're delicious.
Ramp oil, ramp steak sauce, pickled ramps, ramp sriracha, ramp Tabasco, fermented ramp seeds, dried ramp seeds,
but
ramp butter.
They're also kind of hard to find. You might go to the co-op, they might have them sometimes, they might be sold out.
So there's tons of ramps here. Why do you think there's so many ramps on this slope?
Well, this spot has all the conditions that are perfect for ramps. So we have great soil here. The glaciers ground up that limestone and mix it with the sandstone on these ridges. And, you know, they're deposited together here in this soil, so it's almost perfect ramp soil.
I learned about ramps from being in a restaurant, because after a long winter in really seasonal restaurants and working with root vegetables and preserves and pickles all winter, ramps were one of the greatest signs of spring that I had ever seen or tasted. And after the first bite, I was completely hooked.
In North America, we have 2 species of ramp. The Allium tricoccum, or common ramp, some people call this the broadleaf ramp or red ramp, and then the Allium burdickii, which is the narrowleaf ramp or small ramp or white ramp. They're native to hardwood forests. They like rich soiled, deciduous forests, particularly with sugar maple, ash, bitternut hickory, and elm. And they'll be with other kinds of trees, but those are kind of the key trees to look for good habitat for ramps.
The ramps are all in these clusters. We're not digging up the whole cluster. We're just loosening the soil around the cluster and then thinning some out from the middle.
I will always have to leave ramps within a hand spread. Like, I will never take all the ramps out of an area the size of my hand spread. Now, if you come back here in 3 years, the ramps that are left, the bulbs will be bigger, the plants will be bigger.
So it's kind of like thinning plants in a garden.
It's exactly like thinning plants in the garden. I prefer to take a little more than half of an area and then just come back, you know, leave it alone for 5 years or more. If you want big ramps, you have to harvest. You only get those in areas where they've been thinned out. It's possible to overharvest ramps just like anything else. but they're resilient, and it's also not that hard to harvest them responsibly. Never take an entire clump. Leave a minimum of 4 large bulbs in the space of your hand spread. In 5 to 8 years, the bulbs that you leave behind will replace the biomass you harvested. If you want to speed up the recolonization of ramps, not hard to do. So I'll go to a place like this where they're really dense. I pull some out. Oh, we want a colony right here. Disturb the dirt, put in the bulbs. There, boom. I guarantee you, there'll be ramps there.
So you're just putting one in there? You're not going to put the whole clump?
No, so I put actually 2 in there, but at better than 95% survival, I can feel pretty certain we'll have a good healthy clump there. I've been interested in ramps since I first learned to identify them and eat them as a teenager. I always had this dream of living off the land, and I had a dream of what I call ecoculture. Cultivating a native landscape of native plants to produce food for people. When I started harvesting ramps, I had a good friend who got on my case and told me that it wasn't sustainable to harvest ramps and dig up the bulbs. And this just made me incredibly curious about what is the rate of growth and can I sustainably harvest these?
So really, if you're doing it the right way and just kind of thinning the clusters out, I don't have to feel bad about eating ramp bulbs?
Not at all. This has been done for thousands of years without eliminating the ramps, and we can do it for the next 1,000 or more. I see an incredible potential, not just for the individual person to eat really delicious, super nutritious food that's fun to gather. I also see this potential for rural people throughout the range of ramps to have this incredible economic resource if they can manage it well. And we already have a great model for managing these woodland ecosystems with maple syrup. There are thousands of maple syrup producers, and every one of them could have ramps in the understory. Most of them do, but they don't generally manage it for ramps. They might just dig a few here and there. But there is so much economic potential. You could double the value that you could get per acre by harvesting ramps in your sugar bush. There are already a number of forest farmers who are managing their ramp populations sustainably and harvesting on a commercial basis, and who have been doing this for decades or generations.
So we started Harmony Valley Farm here in 1985 was our first crop year. And we plan for it to continue even long after I retire. Our crew has been here a long time, and they've been well trained. They really understand that if we were to harvest all of them, then that wouldn't be part of our farm anymore. So when these guys are planting on this hillside, you know, they're looking at 5 or 10 years from now, they've got some pretty accessible ramps to harvest, you know? So, I mean, we've harvested one area for at least 35 years, and there's no end in sight. I mean, they're still coming back. So, with care, you know, of harvesting, our ramp woods are actually getting better in some ways. But we can't see any reason that can't continue for ever, you know?
The real-life experience of places like Harmony Valley Farms corroborates what I've been discovering through my long-term ramp research projects. $18 and $20. We have a 2 that is $27, $14, and $13. This is my sugar bush. I have a lot of ramps here, but I have a lot of areas that don't have ramps. And this is where I do my research projects, or some of them. I started my ramp research projects at my sugar bush 17 years ago to look at things like what are the reproduction rates at low population densities, how does harvesting affect reproduction rates, what are sustainable harvest rates, and how do different harvest and management practices affect seed production and bulb division. So we're both transplanting bulbs And we're planting by seed. This is a seed plot that I put in 8 years ago, and in year 7 last year, over 100 plants bloomed in here. Our research has shown surprisingly fast reproduction rates at low population densities. We've also shown that seed and bulb production is density dependent, meaning that the denser a population of ramps is, the fewer bulbs they produce and the fewer seeds they produce. So thinning the ramps dramatically speeds up their reproduction rate. And I've been shocked at how fast the reproduction actually occurs. One of the things that prompted me to want to do my own research was this paper that came out in 1993 about the demography and population dynamics of ramps. And I believe that that paper is really the wellspring of the ramp shaming that has become so prevalent in the last few years. They've become probably the most controversial wild edible in North America. There's not any logic or any evidential basis upon which this ramp shaming is founded, but it's become vehement and angry a lot of the time.
I think on one side, you have people who are so fearful that harvesting one leaf from a ramp plant or one bulb from a ramp patch is going to make them extinct. And on the other side, you may have people that commercially harvest them or sell them to restaurants and dig up the whole clumps and dig them everywhere they see them, or people that are new to foraging who see small patches of ramps and take every single one they can see from an area. I really think that there is a way that both of these sides can find a middle ground.
What they did is they studied a dense population in which the reproduction rate was close to 0, which is what you would expect when a place is full. They took these near 0 growth rates and used them to create a model that predicted that any amount of harvest would result in extinction. This defies the most basic principles of population ecology, that when the density goes down, reproduction goes up and mortality goes down. So the demographics at low densities after harvest would be completely different. And if you actually read the paper, you'll find a second gimmick hidden in here. Instead of reducing mortality rates because of harvest, they actually inserted an imaginary and unobserved 25% mortality from the trauma of harvest. These researchers didn't actually observe population declines in their study, but they created a mathematical model designed to predict unrealistic population declines. I designed my research project partly in response to that paper, and when I got about 5 to 8 years in, I started to realize how drastically different my results were, because I was looking at ramps at lower densities that had been harvested, and I was looking at them for a longer term, and I've been shocked by the reproduction that we've found. In our longest running study, 85 isolated bulbs after 10 years grew into 1,232 bulbs. That's about a 1,400% increase. I mean, really it boils down to this fact that ramps are a sustainable and self-replenishing resource, and if we harvest in the right way at the right rates, this can be done perpetually. By understanding the reproductive ecology of ramps and the habitat needs, you can not only harvest sustainably, but you can help them proliferate at different stages of growth. There's different ways that you can help those ramp populations increase. So right now we're at the end of April, and these leaves are almost at their maximum size. They will get a little bit larger. The leaves are not opened on any of the trees overhead. So in probably a week, the leaves are going to start to open up on the canopy trees, and that will shade the forest floor. And as the forest floor is shaded, then those ramp leaves will wilt and die back. So the understory vegetation changes more slowly than the trees. You can carry some ramps in your pocket, transplant a few bulbs up there, and you come back in a decade and you have a beautiful patch of ramps from what you transplanted. It's easy for a harvester to make the world have a lot more ramps than before they started harvesting. It's July 8th, and the ramps are in peak bloom. The leaves have been gone for 6 weeks, and there is no trace of them left. If these were the narrow leaf ramp, they would be at peak bloom about a month earlier, and the narrow leaf ramps right now around here already have the green fruits starting out, each of which holds 3 seeds. When they bloom, their bulbs normally split. Sometimes they split without blooming, and sometimes they bloom without splitting, but most of the bulb division happens along with flowering. So seed production and bulb reproduction go together. I'm gonna dig up a little clump here to show you what's going on underground. We've got a number of non-flowering bulbs, and these connected bulbs would be ones that probably bloomed last year and then divided. That's a decent sized bulb that'll probably bloom next year. The ones blooming this year, on average, are larger than the non-blooming bulbs. So they don't just get continually larger over their life cycle, they get bigger, smaller, bigger, smaller. So once they bloom, then they store up energy awaiting the next blooming, which might take 1 year, it might take 10 years before they bloom a second time. So you can see around us that there are hundreds of blooming stalks here, and each one of those is going to produce an additional bulb. You give that bulb 1 year to grow and increase its size, that's hundreds of new bulbs. So, you know, this is an important part of the reproduction, and this is, you can see the active increase in population occurring here. And also, there's going to be hundreds of seeds produced here. In fact, we still have viable seeds left over from last year. So I dig out a few bulbs to use, but in that disturbed soil, those seeds are going to germinate quite well. It's early October now, and the leaves have begun to fall, and this is the time that we gather the seeds of the wild leek. Ramps spread by bulb division and by seed, and both strategies are really important for the ramp survival. Right here is one. Not quite so big, but spreading seed or transplanting, both are highly effective. Spreading seed is probably more labor efficient. The seeds that fall by gravity are then subsequently spread by water, by flooding a lot of the time. Also, white-footed mice spread the seeds, and so do nuthatches, maybe some other birds, and that's probably the most important way that they disperse over long distances. We go out and gather these at this time of year, and we disperse them ourselves, and we simply scratch the surface of the earth and scratch them in, and they have an incredibly good germination rate. So I did a plot that I put in of more than 2,000 plants, and on year 6, 0, and on year 7, more than 400 bloomed. Once the plant blooms, then that bulb often, but not always, splits into 2 bulbs, and they call that second bulb a daughter bulb. Of course, I'm not proving anything new here. Thousands of people have been doing this for thousands of years and proving this plant can reproduce and recover from harvest. This is so exciting to me because this is a nice sized patch of ramps we're gonna put in, and it will be here for my great, 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 great grandchildren. My kids love to collect ramps with me. In fact, they don't even know that it's not normal. It's May 2nd. The ice has been out of the ground for about a week, and the ramps have already grown about 3 inches. So they react very quick to the spring thaw. At 1 week, believe it or not, we are already done with 20% of the growing season for this plant. We also have the dead remains of last year's flower stalks, and we've got 1-year-old seedlings coming up from the seed crop 2 years ago. So this is one of the places that we planted about 18 months ago with ramp seeds, and this is all trout lilies coming up in the spring for years, but now we got ramps coming up. This shows how much difference somebody can make just by spreading ramp seeds with a really small amount of effort. We've got millions of acres of excellent ramp habitat in the Midwest that doesn't have ramps. And if people were to do this, who harvested ramps, we could double the acreage of ramps in the Midwest in a decade. We need more people foraging if we are going to conserve these landscapes. The people who collect the plants are the people who protect the plants.
That's good.
If you don't have people with a deep association with the plant, you have nobody to speak for the plant, you have nobody who understands the plant's ecology. And there are a small number of unscrupulous harvesters, but generally the act of harvesting anything from nature creates this instinctive response that we all know. It's called gratitude. The relationship to ramps is part of this bigger relationship to native landscapes that we desperately need to foster, because the people that are out there eating these plants are the ones who love these plants and love these landscapes and protect them.